Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in the story who enter into intimate relationships are over 18 years old. For most of my life, there was only one thing that attracted me. I am handsome, and I look very attractive. This is not bragging. This is the truth that you will probably believe when I tell you honestly about my other qualities. I'm not smart, I'm not a very good athlete, I'm not a very good guy. I'm self-centered, I'm lazy, and I don't have much money. At least I wasn't like that at the beginning of this story. Most of what I've achieved in life has been achieved solely because of my symmetrical cherubic face, wavy blonde hair, and tall and slender body, which looked good, but wasn't interested in hard work or sports. Because of my good looks, I've been making love a lot since I turned 18. However, I had very few relationships that lasted long, because when a girl or a woman realized that I was not very smart, pleasant, or hardworking, they stopped being fascinated by my appearance and abandoned me. I tried very hard with one girl, and she really liked me, maybe even loved me, for a good 6 months. Then she found out that I was cheating on her, even though we were supposed to be together, and she dumped me. I eventually earned my associate's degree in business from a local college, even though it took me 3 years to complete, and I may have had the lowest grade point average of anyone who ever graduated from high school. When I started looking for a job, I discovered that at least for a guy, looks don't mean shit. Employers are interested in what you can do, not how handsome you are. By the time I graduated from the local college, I had almost spent the inheritance that my grandfather left me after his death. My parents were not rich and were not interested in helping me anyway, and I was desperate to find some kind of paid job. So I started attending various. I'm sending my meager resume by hand. I'm looking for some entry-level job. For 6 days in a row, I failed everywhere I went. On the 7th day, I finally got lucky, and that was what it was, pure luck. I was sitting at the reception desk in the ornate lobby and writing a resume. All the female administrators were polite to me because of my appearance, but they never made any hiring decisions. Immediately after me, a courier entered the lobby with a very uncomfortable box on which "Fragile" was written in large red letters. When the courier was putting down his handcart, the box tipped over. More by luck than in an attempt to save her on my part, she fell on top of me and knocked me to the floor, but I cushioned her fall so that I didn't hear something inside her break. Of course, the incident with the fallen box caused a big commotion in the office, and several people came over to help me remove the box. The courier was very apologetic, and several people asked if I had suffered any injuries. One of the people watching the event had the appearance of a boss man, which was confirmed by the fact that everyone treated him with respect when he approached after restoring order. At least 2 of them called him Mr. Williams, and on the door was written, "Williams Securities, LLC." I say he looked like a boss because he was wearing a 3-piece pinstriped suit, a monogrammed shirt, a silk tie, polished shoes, and a jewel-encrusted watch. He looked to be in his 40s, handsome, with perfectly trimmed black hair with a touch of gray at the temples. His height was about 185 centimeters, about my height, and his weight was probably about 90 kilograms. "Did you help deliver our new server?" he asked me, not really accusing me, but not particularly politely either. No, sir," I replied, immediately assuming a respectful air. "I was just leaving my resume in case you needed someone for an entry-level position, and I guess I just happened to be in the wrong place when it happened." He looked past me at the 2 computer scientists who had already removed what I assumed was a new server from the box, while the distressed delivery man watched it. "Is there any damage?" Williams asked the computer geeks. "It doesn't look like it, Mr. Williams, but we'll know for sure by the end of the day," one of them sobbed back. "Well, don't sign the delivery until you're sure, but we really need it done yesterday, so let's hope everything's going to be okay," he retorted. Then he turned to the courier and barked, "Have someone from your office come in tomorrow, and we'll let you know if there's any damage, and if there is, you'll have to pay a lot." The courier just nodded and left with his tail between his legs. While this was happening, I just stood there. Williams turned back to me and asked, "What's your name?" "Brett Saunders," I said. "Well, Brett, since you may have saved the server and saved us a lot of time and effort, the least I can do is accept your resume," Williams retorted, reaching out for a copy rather than shaking mine. Williams was clearly evaluating me as he spoke and did this. "Thank you," Mr. Williams, I said, handing him a copy of my resume. Is this your correct phone number and address listed here? He asked. Yes, sir, I replied. Are you married? That was his next question, which scared the hell out of me, although not so much that I didn't answer it quickly. No, sir, I'm not married, I replied. I swear that the pretty red-haired receptionist, who couldn't help but listen to the conversation as it was taking place right in front of her desk, beamed when I said that, and Williams didn't miss her reaction. Thanks, I'll probably call you to arrange an interview, he said, and then turned and walked down the hall. The very next morning, Williams himself called me and invited me to an interview. The interview was strange. It mostly concerned my past relationships with women, cars, sports, and drinking. I knew from my friend in the HR department of a large company that most of the questions were not suitable for a job interview, but I was an unqualified specialist and desperately needed any work at all, so I just went with the flow. Williams must have liked my answers because he offered me a job as an employee with a minimum wage. I jumped at it and got to work the next day. Williams Securities, LLC, in fact, was engaged in asset management. Williams was a very smart guy with good intuition, an ability to understand people, and where his personal interests or the interests of his clients were concerned, he was absolutely ruthless. He was one of the few people I've ever met in my life who was more self-centered and unpleasant than myself, and after I spent a couple of months with him, he became the last person I wanted to emulate, despite his success and wealth. At my job, I had the strangest responsibilities, if you can call them that I've ever heard of. I didn't actually have a job description, but I did menial work most of the day, including communicating with all the female employees. However, whenever a client, the wife or girlfriend of a male client, was in the office or needed to be picked up at the airport or elsewhere in the city, I always intervened and introduced myself as one of Williams' business partners and not as an errand boy. I really learned something about business at these meetings and after them. When Williams set tasks for me in front of clients, he usually picked up the assignments and reassigned them the next day, but I gained some experience in dealing with real business issues. Financially, I was doing pretty well, and about 6 months later I signed a 1-year lease for a new, nicer apartment and bought a better car than a used Ford. Besides, I was, as usual, very popular with women. Although acquaintances warned me against this, they included, although not limited to, 2 women at work, a pretty red-haired secretary, Denise, and one of the analysts, high-level work, Michelle. Denise was single, my age, 23 years old. Michelle was 33. On the day that would have been 7 months since my employment at Williams Securities, LLC, Williams, whom I always called Mr. Williams, except when communicating with female clients, wives, or girlfriends of male clients. When I was ordered to call him Jerry, called me to my office around 10 in the morning, motioning me to sit down and asking the secretary not to answer the phone. He looked at me intently and immediately got down to business. Brett, I've been watching you closely for the last 7 months. Do you want to hear my assessment? Not quite sure if I wanted to, but not wanting to tell him about it, I muttered, Of course, Mr. Williams. You will never succeed in business. You're not smart or diligent enough, and you don't have a business sense. However, you, more than anyone else I've ever seen, are talented at eliciting a positive reaction from women. In fact, it's hard to believe that you talked that cold Michelle into it. It shook me to the core for many reasons. The main reasons were, how did he know I was with Michelle? He's married, and judging by the photo on his desk, his wife looks amazing, and why the hell is he telling me this shit? I guess I was just sitting there with my mouth open, but I don't think he was expecting an answer. At least he started again, still looking me in the eye. Anyway, I'm going to fire you from your job at the company, but I'm offering you another job that matches your talents at another company that I own, called Mystical Beginnings, LLC. However, before I go on to describe your job responsibilities, you must sign this confidentiality agreement. With that, he handed me an envelope marked confidential in large letters. Inside was a document on 2 pages with 1 interval. Read the confidentiality agreement, Brett, and meet me for lunch in the dining room on the 2nd floor of the Metropolitan Club at 12:30. I said your name. Don't tell anyone about the meeting with me or what we just discussed. Is that clear? Yes, sir, Mr. Williams, I replied quickly. Also, do not read the document where anyone else can see it. Go into the small conference room and close the door, he continued, making a motion with his hand, dismissing me. I did as Williams told me. I couldn't believe what was said in the document. It was both a job agreement and a confidentiality agreement. For $10,000 a year more than I was making now, plus using a one-year-old shiny black Corvette and the company's luxury apartment when I wanted it, I had to seduce one or more women the company would appoint. The term company refers to the company Mystical Beginnings, LLC. I will never be able to disclose anything about my work on pain of a refund of all the money the company has ever paid me, plus penalties for violating confidentiality unless a court requires it. I will be informed about one or more women whom I will be instructed to seduce only after I sign the agreement. I will make every effort to seduce and will inform the company weekly about the details of my success. I was still in shock when I showed up at the Metropolitan Club at 12:28. Williams was already there. He was sitting at a separate table in the far corner of the luxurious dining room on the second floor. The head waiter quickly showed me the place. After ordering a martini for himself and an imported beer for me, Williams wasted no time. Well, are you going to honor the confidentiality agreement? The only thing I haven't told you is that you're going to be fired from Williams Securities, LLC, whether you sign it or not. To be honest, the last statement was the only thing I expected in this whole situation. I was in no position to refuse, given the rent of the apartment and the payment of the car, although most likely I would have agreed to my new confidential job status anyway. I'm inclined to sign, Mr. Williams. However, I would like to know who one or more women are. I'm sorry. You'll sign first, and then you'll find out, he said, handing me a pen while the waiter served our drinks. When I reached for the pen, Williams ordered lunch for both of us. 2 lobster specialties, he told the waiter. As soon as the waiter left, he said, I know that lobster is your favorite dish, but you can't afford it. I want you to get a taste of the good life you will lead if you join the mystical endeavors. How the hell did he know that lobster was my favorite dish? It flashed through my mind. He saw the puzzled expression on my face. I know a lot about you, Brett. So are you going to sign this damn agreement or not? I took the agreement out of my jacket pocket, signed it, and dated it. I handed him a signed agreement and a pen. Leave the pen, Brett, and here's your watch, he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a Tag Heuer watch. They cost $5,000, but you can use them, not keep them, unless you succeed. Then you'll keep them as a bonus, he said with a devilish grin. Nice, was all I could say as I put the pin in my shirt pocket and put the watch on my wrist. They really looked good. Here's your goal, Williams said, handing me the photo and sipping a martini. I have seen several photos of this woman, although I have never met her. However, I had never seen such a photo of her. She was naked. I couldn't resist blurting out, "This is your wife, Gina?" Perceptive, Williams replied with an even more devilish grin. I don't understand, I muttered. I'm not in favor of staying married or faithful for a long time, Williams replied casually. I've been married for 4 years, and even though she's cool, it's time for a new model. However, according to my prenuptial agreement, if I just divorce her, she will receive 10 times more than she would have received if I could prove that she cheated on me. You're going to make her change. Wow, was all I could say. For the next 35 minutes, Williams talked almost incessantly, interrupting his diatribe only for a moment when he began to eat his signature lobster dish. Despite my love for the taste of these prickly creatures, I was in a daze when he dumped dozens of facts and hints on me, so I didn't really taste them the way I would have liked. To summarize, Williams told me that my appearance exactly matches her type, as evidenced by the last 2 boyfriends she had before she married Williams. That she had a high libido and that he had, in fact, dumped her for a month, so she should be on edge. Despite this, I should take my time and set a goal to receive it within 3 to 4 months. It would be better if I could pour 3 glasses of wine into her within an hour, although she carefully monitored her alcohol consumption and asked me not to use roughs. He also said that she loved material goods and flattery, so to make compliments, and if I needed to buy any jewelry or trinkets for her, I would let him know and he would give me money. At the end of lunch, he handed me a dossier that contained additional information about her, including her age, 29 years old, and past, how he thought she spent her days, and what topics she liked to talk about the most. It also included a 4-month guest pass to his country club. His last words were, "Bring this file to your house 10 minutes after I leave the club. Leave your watch and pen at home, and then come to the office, where I will fire you in a pleasant but firm manner." I did as I was asked. That same day, he cleared his desk and never entered Williams Securities, LLC again. While preparing for the meeting with Gina, I decided that I would be so successful that I would receive a $50,000 bonus provided for by the employment agreement and confidentiality. The bonus would have been earned if I had slept with Gina, obtained evidence, and testified in every detail during the deposition and trial, while denying any collusion with Jerry Williams. In the course of some research that I did, I found out that on paper, Mystical Beginnings LLC has nothing to do with Williams. And maybe she'll be fine. I chuckled to myself in a completely smug manner. She looked really good in the nude photo that Williams gave me. My first 3 real days at work, I couldn't even find Gina Williams. Jerry's file stated that she spent most of her time shopping at the mall, going to the country club to swim, play tennis and golf, visited a beauty salon, played cards at the bridge club, and attended musical performances. For the first 3 days, I couldn't find her in any of these places. I decided not to rely on Jerry's intelligence, as it was clearly erroneous, and to follow her. To do this, I used my 3-year-old Ford, not the luxury Corvette that Jerry gave me. I followed Gina for a week before trying to contact her. I couldn't help but grin at each new place she appeared. I couldn't believe that Jerry had been married to her for 4 years and knew almost nothing about her. Maybe she was deliberately hiding her normal life from him. That first week, Gina volunteered for Charity Foundation A for 2 6-hour days, Charity Foundation B for 2 4-hour days, and Charity Foundation C for 1 5-hour day. This included working with battered women to help them gain self-confidence and find jobs, teaching poor children to read, and planning fundraising events. She also taught strip aerobics classes for 90 minutes over 2 days, once attended a 2-hour acting class, did ceramics for 90 minutes at a local college, and practiced for an hour on each of the 3 days. She only went to the country club to exercise or meet people for lunch and talk about the charities she volunteered for. I have to say that I was amazed at how busy she was, how diverse her activities were, and how devoted she was to other people. The most amazing thing was that she taught strip aerobics, since she certainly didn't need the money. After paying off the guard, I was able to secretly watch her second strip aerobics class this week for about half an hour. Although no one in the class actually stripped naked, they, including Gina, stripped down to a thong bikini and sweated a lot doing it. Although I wasn't near her, the sight of Gina in a thong bikini definitely made my mouth water and my pants tighten. Gina is about 155 centimeters tall, weighs 50 kilograms. Her face is, by any measure, beautiful, with laughing big brown eyes, full lips, and a heavenly nose. She usually wears her glossy, wavy brown hair with red streaks down over her shoulders, although she collects it in a bun or ponytail when she teaches strip aerobics or works out in country club gyms. After the first week, I quickly developed a plan. I was volunteering at Charity Foundation A on the same days and in the same neighborhood as Gina, and I did my best to get to the gym at the country club before she arrived, so she wouldn't know I was watching her. This required installing a GPS tracker on her car, which, as it turned out, was not difficult. Since she never drove in a certain direction unless she was heading to the country club, I hoped I could anticipate her arrival there. It was also not difficult to sign up to help the Charity Foundation A, a center for women who have been subjected to violence. They needed a positive male influence, especially on the children of some abused women. They hired me on the very day, Monday, when I signed up, at first just getting used to the procedures and communicating with some children. I found out that Gina worked as I expected, after a week of watching her on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I signed up for these days as well. In fact, Gina was in charge of the group I was assigned to. When I first met Gina, I wasn't ready for her charm. "Hi, Brett. I'm Gina," she said with a big smile, holding out her hand. "We are glad that you are with us." "I'm glad to help," I replied, really feeling an electric shock go through my body when I touched her. My first thought was, how the hell could Jerry Williams get tired of being married to this fox? Because there was something about her that was not visible either in photographs or when viewed from a distance. "I'm ready to do whatever you ask of me," I continued, holding her hand and smiling broadly. I am not a very qualified specialist, but I promise to work hard. What brings you to our little charity organization? What is it? She asked, finally pulling her hand out of mine. Well, I don't like to talk about it, I muttered, not expecting such a question, although if I were smart, I should have. However, I came to my senses pretty quickly. Let's just say that I had a relative that I loved, who once found herself in a situation that many women find themselves in, and I was still a child then and couldn't do anything about it, but I hope I can now, I lied. Great, she said. Let's get to work. By the end of the day on Tuesday, I was completely exhausted. Gina made me run everywhere, do anything, including buy goods for charity. She laughed a lot when she saw my Corvette with the top down, littered with purchased items. With my own money, I also brought healthy snacks to the children and achieved my goal of impressing Gina with my generosity and initiative. And, which was a secondary factor for me, the kids loved me for it. Meeting Gina at the end of my shift made one of the few days of truly honest and hard work in my life worth it. Brett, thank you very much. You were great today. Just what we needed. I hope that you will come to me regularly on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I could really use you on my team. It was a really useful job, Gina. I'm really impressed with how well organized you are. I could learn a lot from you, I replied with a smile. Haha, no one thinks I'm a model of organization, she laughed. But I hope we can do the job. I'll see you on Thursday, I replied. Even though I was very tired, I wanted to make sure Gina was doing her strip aerobics class. So I followed her, paid the waiter again, and my mouth watered when I saw her still full of energy, not exhausted like me performing one provocative exercise after another. I just confirmed Gina's schedule on Wednesday. I haven't tried to contact her. On Thursday, I was working at Charity Foundation A again, and I was lucky enough to work with Gina at least half the time. Our farewell meeting at the end of the second day of work there was even more fruitful than the first one. As we walked to our cars, her Mercedes and my Corvette, she said, Brett, I have to ask you something. I hope this doesn't embarrass you, she giggled. It's hard to confuse me, I giggled. Well, Brett, could you be just as charming with other volunteers and clients? Most of them have the false hope that you might be flirting with them because you treat them so well, and I don't want them to be disappointed, since it's obvious that a handsome guy like you has a choice of women. My jaw dropped. No one has called me cute for as long as I can remember. I've always tried to be optimistic around Gina, not trying to impress the female volunteers or the clients of the center, but I think it went beyond all bounds. I'm sorry, I muttered. I was just trying to be nice. I'm not saying you shouldn't do this, Gina giggled again. Just don't give them false hope, which many of them are already on the way to finding. Then she came up to me, pinched my chin, and, getting into the car, grinned. You're too cute for your own good. I hope she didn't notice how I was staring at her gorgeous ass as she got into the driver's seat of her car. The next day, Friday, I suspected that she would go to the country club to study. I was closely monitoring her GPS while I was near the country club, and when I saw her car approaching me, I quickly went to the main training myself. I was already dressed in my gym clothes, sat down on the first aerobic machine I saw, so that she had to walk past me to enter the room, and poured some water on my head and t-shirt to give the impression that I had been there for a long time. I didn't look at her when she came in, but I started to get out of the elliptical machine when she came in. Brett? She intoned, coming within a meter of me. I looked very surprised. Gina? What are you doing here? I could ask you the same question, she laughed. Well, I have a 4-month guest membership, and today was my first day here. I need to get in shape to jump over all the obstacles you put me through on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I laughed. Are you a member of the club? Yes, for several years now, she giggled. What exactly are you working on? Well, Gina, I'm new to the gym and I was hoping someone would show me. I've been working out on an elliptical machine until I sweat, but I'm not sure if this is the best exercise for me. Let me help you, she said. Wow, what could be better? I thought to myself. Gina showed me some exercises. I couldn't keep up with her, but I tried my best, motivated both by the prospect of getting a $50,000 bonus and by the desire to get into her panties. When she thankfully passed out after about an hour of hard work, she said, I guess I tired you out too much on the first day. Let me buy you lunch to make up for it. You don't have to, I said, but not being a fool, I continued. but I'd be happy to have lunch with you if you'd take pity on me if I fainted from exhaustion." She laughed. She really had an infectious laugh and said, "I'll see you in the dining room in 15 minutes." We had a very pleasant conversation over lunch. I tried not to flirt with her, especially because she twirled the wedding ring on her left hand from time to time. Instead, I was happy to tell a fictional story from my life that I made up to make myself more interesting. When we were saying goodbye, she squeezed my hand and said, "See you on Tuesday." "I can't wait," I replied, trying not to show my enthusiasm. Over the next 3 weeks, Gina and I got to know each other pretty well. At least she got to know the fake me pretty well. When I was with her, I was always nice to everyone around me, and over time it became easier and easier for me to do it. However, I was careful not to mislead any of the volunteers or clients of the shelter for abused women. At some point, I caught myself being especially nice to someone when Gina wasn't even around, and I laughed inwardly. "You're not really becoming a good guy, are you?" Gina and I agreed to practice regularly on Wednesdays and Fridays. It was excruciating for 2 weeks, but then I started to enjoy it. However, I would never have done this, even with the obvious positive changes in my physical shape, if it hadn't been for the fact that she looked damn beautiful in her sports clothes. Only my sports belt prevented me from experiencing a permanent, noticeable boner. I reported weekly to Jerry about the work done on the mobile phone he bought me, and called only on this mobile phone. He seemed pleased with the progress. He didn't expect a miracle. He said she even mentioned me in a very positive light. "Keep it up, and if you manage to get her drunk somehow, you're in," were his last words after the 4th week's progress report. Trying to seduce Gina took up a lot of my time, especially because I was collecting information about her, as well as organizing fun events and outings in case I could persuade her to meet me one weekend, especially since Jerry was planning to leave for the weekend soon. Jerry didn't tell me, but I knew he'd run off with a client of his firm named Ginny Marlowe. The end of the 4th week of my acquaintance with Gina was a kind of breakthrough. Jerry informed me that he was leaving that weekend, according to Michelle, with Ginny Marlowe, and that Gina was furious because she had 4 tickets to a concert by one of her favorite bands and invited 2 of her friends to go. I studied Fun, a band I knew almost nothing about. Armed with information from Jerry and my research, I mentioned to Gina on Tuesday that I couldn't get a ticket to Fun, one of my favorite bands. Her eyes sparkled. On Wednesday, as we sipped healthy drinks after training and wiped our sweat with a towel, Gina asked, "Tell me, Brett, would you really like to go to a concert on Saturday night? Who do I have to kill?" I chuckled in between my sips. "My husband is out of town on business this weekend, and I'm going to go with my friends Bill and Sybil, but I have his ticket. I don't want it to go to waste." "Are you kidding? I would love to go. It's at 8:30, right?" I replied excitedly. "Of course. Do you want me to pick you up, Gina?" "Actually, Sybil and I will pick you up at 7 o'clock. Just give me your address," she replied. "Hey, since you're so cute, how about going to a baseball game with me on Sunday afternoon?" "They gave me 2 seats in the box," I replied. Of course, Jerry gave me the box seats, but Gina didn't know that. "Of course," she smiled. "We can discuss the details on Saturday evening." Probably to make it clear that we weren't on a date, I sat in the front with Bill, and Sybil and Gina sat in the back seat when they picked me up for the concert. It was easy to talk to Bill and Sybil, and the 4 of us swapped places during the show, actually standing, since no one was sitting during the performance. Gina sang along and danced as provocatively as you would expect from a strip aerobics teacher. At one point, I said to Gina and Sybil, "Wow, you both move so well. I feel awkward dancing my chicken dance next to you." Gina is a strip aerobics instructor, and I went to her classes. Sybil laughed in between numbers. "You're a fool," Gina laughed, playfully hitting Sybil. "Don't tell him that. He'll think I'm naughty." After a great time at the concert, we went out for a drink. I tried my best to get Gina drunk, but she didn't come close to the 3 glasses of wine in an hour that Jerry said I should have offered her. She was definitely on her guard. However, Bill got drunk anyway. He was an exceptionally friendly drunk. When Gina and Sybil were in the bathroom, he put his arm around my shoulders and muttered indistinctly, "You know, Brett, you're a great guy. I wish you were Gina's husband. Not that asshole Jerry. Have you met him?" "No, Bill, I haven't met," I lied. "He's not treating Gina right, and she deserves better. Sybil tried to get her to divorce that asshole, and maybe you can help," he continued. I asked, but Bill didn't have time to answer, because at that moment the girls returned. Given Bill's condition, I had to get behind the wheel of his car when we left the bar. At first I dropped Gina off without a kiss, but it was my first real hug, as a result of which my stomach ached. I disembarked next, and Sybil, who was completely sober by then, drove them home with Bill. On Sunday, Gina and I had a wonderful time at a baseball game and then over a casual dinner. I managed to hug Gina one more time before she got out of my Corvette, which caused my pants to tighten again. I felt pretty good, but only because Gina was so much fun to be around. I would never have pursued a woman for so long or so subtly. I was careful because I wanted to get a $50,000 bonus, and she was not someone I could rush. I was still going through several alternative seduction methods in my mind when I arrived at the women's shelter on Tuesday. I got there a little earlier, but Gina was already there and arguing with a big bear-like man at the entrance. The guy should have been at least 190 centimeters tall and about 120 kilograms of weight. He was crazy, drunk, or both. I quickly assessed the situation. It was clear that he was the husband of one of the beaten women. I assumed it was Cheryl because she was standing nearby, frozen in fear, and her 6-year-old daughter was hiding behind her. When I entered, the big guy pushed Gina out of the way. I am a lover, not a fighter, and all my life I have avoided quarrels at all costs. However, when I saw Gina being pushed aside, something inside me snapped. I grabbed the big guy by the arm as he walked towards Cheryl. "Hey dude, you can't be here," I shouted. "Leave before I call the police." I barely had time to say the word police when he swung at me shouting, "Fuck you." Fortunately, it was only a glancing blow, but it still threw me against the wall. I foolishly jumped back and hit him in the side with a block, knocking him away from Cheryl. The big guy's anger and intoxication worked both for him and against him. It worked for him because it was clear that he wasn't going to stop. It worked against him, as it blinded him, and his punches were not directed as well as they should have been, fortunately for me. Otherwise, he would have killed me. Despite his wildness, he still beat the shit out of me, eventually knocking me to the ground. Shortly after I hit the floor, someone, most likely a feisty little Gina, distracted him by throwing something at him that hit him in the head, although it didn't really hurt him. Then luck intervened. I got up quickly, intending to run past the big guy while he was distracted looking for a weapon. Instead, in my eagerness, I stumbled when he turned around. From what others told me later, it seemed to me that I rushed at him to hit his head. Although it had an effect, it wasn't in my plans, but my crown obviously hit him right in the nose. We both fell on our backs, if not unconscious, then certainly so stunned that we could not continue the fight. Obviously, the cops had already been called, because by the time I, with the help of Gina and Cheryl, was able to get to my feet, 3 policemen, who were as tall as the criminal, handcuffed him and put him on his feet. Blood from his nose was everywhere. 10 minutes later, I was already informed of the case, and Police Detective Ormond interviewed me. Cheryl and Gina told me how brave I was when I attacked an angry dude, and I decided to continue the ruse. Except for the fact that I said that I deliberately hit the guy with my head instead of crashing into him blindly, everything I told the detective was true from my point of view. Detective Ormond suggested that I go to the hospital. I refused at first, but seeing how worried Gina was about me and how she fawned over me, I decided that pretending to be more traumatized than I really was could help me achieve my goal. So I let her take me to the hospital and deliberately made meaningless statements while we were driving there. Gina helped me quickly get a doctor from the emergency room. Of course, she couldn't come to the exam room with me. The doctor admitted that I was generally fine and advised, "Just rest the rest of the day, and here's a prescription for 4 Percocet pills for pain. You won't need anything else, and stop taking them if you don't feel excruciating pain." "Thanks, Doc," I said when he handed me the prescription. Of course, Gina was very worried, and I exaggerated my injuries much more than they actually were. The doctor wrote me a prescription for Percocet and told me that I needed to rest a little. "I hate to impose, Gina, but could you take me to the pharmacy and then home?" "To impose?" she exclaimed. "Are you kidding me? You're my hero. You saved Cheryl and her little girl. I will do everything in my power to take care of you." Those words were music to my ears, and I'm sure my mouth split into an evil grin when Gina turned the car around and couldn't see me. When they gave me the prescription, I pretended to take one of the pills in front of Gina. I had no intention of taking them, but simply to use them as an excuse for my further actions if I was refused. I pretended to be close to fainting when Gina brought me to the apartment that Jerry had provided for my use and asked her to undress me so I could sleep. Hanging on Gina's shoulders in my underpants as she put me to bed, I put on a stupid smile on my face. Gina, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever met in my life. I just love everything about you. You're an amazing person. With that, I kissed her. At first she resisted, but then she gave in. When I finally pulled away, she said, "Brett, it's just your pain pill." "No, Gina, it's not like that. You're so amazing." I moaned in her ear, "Gina, please let me make love to you." When we woke up, it was already past 6. "Oh shit," Gina giggled. "I'm supposed to meet Jerry at the restaurant at 6:30, and I need to get dressed." "Is this the same Jerry who dumped you over the weekend?" I asked, gently taking her chin in my hand and looking into her eyes. "I want you more than he does." Gina kissed me hard. "I'd love to, but I can't," she moaned in a tone that made me believe her. "Hello, Mr. Williams. This is Detective Orman from the 4th Precinct. No, this is not a call to contribute to the Cop Boys Club. Your wife, Mrs. Gina Williams, asked me to call." "What? No, she wasn't hurt or in trouble. The reason for my call is that there was an incident at the place she visited today, and she is an important witness and is giving evidence to us. I expect her to finish in about an hour or an hour and a half. Yes, she has her own car at the station, but she says she won't be able to come to dinner, but she'll meet you at home. Yes, I assure you that she is fine, and she is providing great assistance in our investigation. As a true patriotic citizen, yes, I will give her your best wishes." Of course, Jerry didn't say much during the whole conversation, except, "She's here, and you're making love to her, aren't you? Damn attractive," and the like. When I hung up, I smiled broadly at Gina. "Wow, you're just a little devil with a silver tongue," she giggled. "Let me show you what my tongue knows best," I giggled. When she left, completely disheveled, about an hour and a half after I called Jerry, I kissed her passionately. "It was amazing," she replied, and a tear appeared in her right eye. I wiped it off. "When can I see you again?" I asked. "We'll talk about it tomorrow after practice, hero," she replied. She gave me another quick kiss on the lips and left. The next day, I was very glad when Gina expressed neither regret nor apprehension about the future. "I don't love my husband anymore, and I'm thinking how best to divorce him. However, it is extremely important that he does not find out about us. Can you be completely confidential? I demand that this continues." "Yes, damn it. I would do anything for you, but it's not a problem at all, because I'm famous for being able to control myself," I replied seriously. That's how the best period of my life began. I rejected all the others, which at that time was mostly just Michelle. I parted with her in the best possible tradition. She wasn't in love with me. She just liked being with me, but I told her I'd get back to her in a few months if she still agreed. Over the next 2 months, Gina and I were able to have an average of 4 picnics together, each time experiencing, as a rule, multiple highs. In my reports to Jerry, I downplayed my successes. I told him that I liked her a couple of times, but I needed good photographic evidence. I kept sending him pictures from bad to mediocre to calm him down. I didn't want to go through with it, because even though after my first experience with Gina I thought it was impossible, she gave herself completely to me, and I to her. Finally, it got to the point where I needed to complete the case if I wanted to get my $50,000 bonus. I made a small selection of the latest photos that I sent to Jerry and met with him and his lawyer. He said he was going to file for divorce and demand that the moral standards of the prenuptial agreement be respected next Monday. My last communication with Gina was supposed to take place on Sunday. I was determined to make it special and asked Jerry to go out on business that day so I could get myself cleaned up. He readily agreed, obviously in order to be able to take Ginny Marlowe. That Sunday, I took Gina to the nearest 4-star resort. We swam, attended massage sessions for couples, went for a walk in nature. We fell asleep in each other's arms, completely satisfied. On Monday evening, Gina called me in a panic. "Brett, Jerry handed me the divorce papers late this afternoon, and he's referring to the moral aspect of the prenup." You haven't told anyone about us, have you? What? He did it, you idiot. No, I haven't told anyone. I swear. I don't remember being followed either, or any suspicious activity when we were dating. Are there any details in the documents? I replied, pretending to be shocked and excited. No, but in the documents my lover is called BS. He should know about you, she screamed. Did you have sexual intercourse with anyone else while you were married to him? I asked, feeling guilty for asking that question and knowing that she didn't do it to hide my role. Damn it, no. Stop it, she screamed. Do you still need to ask me that after we got close and what we meant to each other? No, of course not. I was just talking about what happened before we met, because I know that you were unhappy with him for a long time before we became close, I replied calmly. We had a further conversation, culminating in Gina's words, Brett, I think we should not meet until everything settles down. I agree, Gina. No more contact, except perhaps periodic calls from you or your lawyer. Do you have a good lawyer? He's a fucking shark, was her fervent reply. I got his name from her, and we hung up. I met with Jerry's lawyer again a few days after my last conversation with Gina. I told him that I had been with her 6 times, was closer to 60, but neither he nor Jerry needed to know about it. I told him the time and places of these 6 connections and photographs. You know, these photos aren't as clear as I'd like, he told me. I didn't want her to get suspicious, I replied. Jerry can tell it's her, can't he? Jerry says he can clearly identify, but I'd just like to get a sure thing, he muttered. It was hard for me to leave Gina. I really missed her. Fortunately, I was able to meet Michelle again. Although I certainly enjoyed making love to her, it wasn't the same at all. I had some kind of feeling of emptiness and malaise that I couldn't explain. Michelle even asked me about it once. I answered quickly, It's probably just because you didn't ask me for anything. Michelle looked puzzled, then laughed and said, Then get the lube out, big boy, and get to work. I had another motive besides that, to get back to Michelle. I was getting valuable information from her. I sent Jerry 2 emails with a question. When will I receive a $50,000 bonus for my testimony? In each case, he answered, after I hear it in court or during testimony. Not before. I think when you have money and influence, like Jerry Williams, you can grease the wheels of justice. The deposition hearing was scheduled just 10 weeks after Gina was sentenced. I met with Jerry's lawyer 2 days before the hearing. I'm surprised they haven't taken your statement, Brett. I had to identify you as a lover. I think it was a bad strategy on their part, he told me. I bet her lawyer got an anonymous call saying it was in his client's best interest not to take a statement from me. I chuckled to myself. Did you take a statement from Gina? I asked Jerry's lawyer. Yes, her lawyer was smart about that, he chuckled. How so? I asked. Well, since adultery is technically still a crime in this state, although no one has been prosecuted for it for decades, and in a couple of other lawsuits in recent years in other states the law has been declared unconstitutional, the newly elected district attorney is a religious fanatic, and he would not agree with this to give Gina as immune. Thus, in her testimony, she was able to refer to the provision of the Fifth Amendment prohibiting self-incrimination. What does this mean? I asked. This means that we have to prove our case without her help. I am sure that she will not speak in court, because otherwise she will have to give up her Fifth Amendment rights and give truthful testimony. But this means that if we don't provide proof, then we won't succeed. Are there any problems with the evidence? I asked. Not really. With your testimony and photos, it should be easy, he replied with a shrug. When I was called to testify at the hearing, I saw Gina for the first time after our phone conversation. Since then, I have never spoken to her or her lawyer about her status or anything else. Even though she knew I was being called as a witness, I saw her start to sob softly when the court clerk asked me, Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and only the truth, so help you God? I bow, I replied confidently. I don't believe in God. Mr. Justice, don't you think that's an appropriate name for Jerry's lawyer enthusiastically started questioning me. This is how the court reporter deciphered the main content of the interrogation. D is Mr. Justice, C is me. D. Do you know Mrs. Gina Williams, Mr. Saunders? S. Yes. She and I are good friends. D. How did you meet? C. We met at a charity that we both volunteered for abused women. D. Have you ever gone out to eat or to events with Mrs. Williams? C. Many times, mostly when her husband, Jerry Williams, was away on business. D. Have you ever had a relationship with her? S. What do you mean? D. Well, have you ever had sexual intercourse? S. No, but we kissed platonically several times. D. What does no mean? Just 2 days ago, in my office, didn't you tell me that you had sexual intercourse with her? S. Yes, I did tell you that, but only because Jerry Williams offered me $50,000 to lie about it. But now that I'm in court and I've taken this oath, I realize that I can't accept the lies he wanted me to tell. That would be a crime, and my conscience would torment me for the rest of my life. D. Do you have any evidence, beyond your words, regarding such a proposal from Mr. Williams? S. Yes, there is. The witness reaches into the inside pocket of his sports jacket and pulls out 2 sheets of paper. These are emails between Mr. Williams and me about this. D. Your Honor, I object. These documents, Judge Pratt, Mr. Lawyer, this is your personal witness, and you cannot object. D. I want him to be treated as a hostile witness. Judge Pratt, he may be hostile, but I will look at his documents. Bailiff, bring me Mr. Saunders' documents. Pause. Judge Pratt, do these emails printed here belong to you and Mr. Jerry Williams, Mr. Saunders? S. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Pratt, I will accept them as evidence. Your objection is noted, Mr. Lawyer. D. Are you sure you didn't make up these emails? Why on earth would Mr. Williams want you to do this? S. Because he wanted to end his marriage in order to marry Miss Virginia Marlowe, with whom he had been having an affair for at least the last few months. D. Your Honor, I object. Judge Pratt, you're at it again, lawyer. If you ask questions that he will answer, I will take his answers into account. Pause. D. Well, what about these numerous photographs, the physical evidence of the plaintiff 12 to 26, which you provided to me, demonstrating your intimacy with Mrs. Williams? S. At the direction of Mr. Williams, I made them on the computer. Actually, this is a picture of Tiffany that I found on the internet, and that looks most like Mrs. Williams. All the photos were taken on the same night in different rooms of her establishment when I was in Nevada. I processed the pictures to remove her tattoos and make her hairstyle, face, and buttocks look more like Mrs. Williams. But initially I chose Tiffany because she already had a striking resemblance to Mrs. Williams. D. It's just ridiculous. Judge Pratt, are you going to impeach your own witness now, Mr. Justice? At this moment, which was not recorded by the court reporter, a blushing Jerry Williams jumped to his feet and screamed, "You're a fucking little shit liar, Saunders. I'll kick your ass for this." Fortunately, the bailiff tried to restrain Jerry. The judge called a break and asked the parties and their lawyers to meet in his office. As they walked to the judge's office, Gina and her lawyer had big smiles on their faces, and Gina winked at me. I stayed in the witness box because no one told me that I was released. The parties, the lawyers, and the judge returned about half an hour later. Then Judge Pratt spoke. I am announcing a break in the trial so that the parties can come to an amicable agreement. Mr. Saunders, you must not talk to the parties or their lawyers until a settlement agreement is reached, or until we resume this hearing within a month. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor, I replied humbly. Mr. Saunders, you can leave, the judge continued. Your Honor, one more question. Given Mr. Williams' reaction to my testimony, I would like to obtain a protective order requiring that neither he nor anyone on his behalf come within 150 meters of me or try to contact me in any way, I pleaded. After a pause for thought, Judge Pratt spoke again. I am ordering that neither the parties nor anyone on their behalf contact Mr. Saunders or approach him at all until this case is completed. Mr. Williams, in view of your outburst in court, rest assured that if anything happens to Mr. Saunders, I will set the dogs on you. Is that clear? After another pause, Williams chuckled. Yes, Your Honor. I'll leave this weasel alone. I'm serious, Mr. Williams, Judge Pratt said, pointing his gavel at Williams. He understands, Your Honor, Attorney Justice replied. I did not have the opportunity to follow what happened next, as no one was allowed to contact me or me with them about this case. I spent the next month looking for another job. In the end, I found it, a little better than the one I had before. About 10 weeks after my testimony, On Friday evening, I was about to go to bed when there was a knock on my door. I haven't had a whole week since Michelle reconciled with her husband and left me, and I was too unmotivated to get some more. Besides, as a result of my relationship with Gina, my standards had risen so much that I was no longer interested in anything but Michelle. "Hi, Brett," Gina said, smiling as I opened the door. She was holding a piece of paper in her hands. "Hi, Gina," I smiled back. "This is my final decision on the divorce, so now I can talk to you, or do something else with 4 letters that end in an X," she giggled. "How did you handle the divorce?" I stammered. "I got half of everything this jerk had, and thanks to you. I'll never have to work for a salary again in my life, but I'm going to work hard starting a new charity," Gina blurted out. "Great. I'm happy for you," I replied. "You should be happy for us, kid, because you're coming with me. Tonight, I plan to pick up where we left off and then continue," she giggled. She was wearing only a raincoat. She opened it to reveal her gorgeous naked body. On Monday morning, after a weekend spent in bed with my new fiancé, I called the office and quit my new job. End.